Corey, do we need to do a mic check?
Check, check. Clint, good.
Ken Harder, testing, testing, testing.
I'm turned on. There we go. Now we can hear. Thank you.
Pam Engel, testing.
Adam Adler.
Dean Hess, check.
Okay, are we set? All right, I'll call this meeting to order, and I'll ask Clint to call the roll, please.
Adler,
Yep.
Harder,
Here.
Garderbreck here, Stoll S-line. Sharon, can you hear us online? Sharon, can you hear us now?
Do we see her?
Engel,
Yes, here.
Lee J.
Here.
Okay, Strands,
Here.
and Stidol S-line again.
Here.
Okay,
All right,
all members present.
thank you. Pam, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Oh, Pam.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With my inexperience doing the meeting, I didn't do that to call to order. All right, do we have any citizen comments? Thank you. We have Candace Balmer here. Would you like to come forward, please? And you have 5 minutes maximum, please.
Thanks. If the decision has been made already on how to move forward in January with virtual learning, please stop me right now and I'll save everybody a lot of time. It's my understanding that that hasn't been made yet, and so I wanted to voice some concerns. So basically, regarding your plan and your discussion, I know that you review the COVID counts for the county and the COVID counts for the school, but I feel that there's a lot more to be taken into consideration and more statistics that need to be considered. Basically, what I would like to see is some attention paid to the data on how absenteeism has increased, GPAs for the average student have decreased, how many parents have been notified that their kid is not meeting grade level expectations due to virtual learning in 2020. How has children's physical health declined due to the lack of activity and the increase of obesity? How has child abuse increased? How many more kids and adults, including staff, have mental health concerns? How many more kids have started self-harming, cutting, abusing alcohol and drugs this past year? And how has virtual learning isolated those students? And what is the impact there? Through my meeting this past month with my pediatrician, and I've read many studies of many more peds, there's articles out there, I'm sure you've all seen them, more and more coming out and basically stating that they have more concerns regarding the fallout of dealing with these mental health issues that they're seeing with the children, with the parents, than they are with actually dealing with the virus itself. In the words of Frederick Douglass, it's easier to build strong children than to repair a broken man. And my concern is that virtual learning is contributing factor right now in breaking our kids. I truly respect all of you, the work that you do, the decisions that you make, with one exception, and that is the virtual learning. Right now, you need to make the decision that has been scientifically proven to benefit the kids. Open up the schools 5 days a week, run our normal schedule. It's the right decision to have the kids in school, in person, for the benefit of the kids, for the parents, for the teachers, for the community now, and as we move forward into the future. And please don't think that I stand before you right now because I do not understand the full scope and the impact of COVID and how it's impacting all of our lives. My family has had COVID. We recently lost a family member due to COVID. But right now, I feel like we have to focus on the future and my kids' future, our kids' future. And in order to do that, we need to do what's best for them, and that is to get them back into school in person. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on with the minutes from the November 9th regular board meeting and the December 7th special board meeting. Anybody have any additions or corrections to offer? Then I would entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Yeah, and I would move that we accept both minutes as submitted.
Motion by Clint, is there a second? A second by Adam. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. On to the financial report. Dean.
If you take a look at your financial report, the cash on hand as of November 1st, 2020 was in the amount of $3,281,076. The November receipts total was $455,059. Some of the receipts to pay particular attention to was the SAGE AGR aid came in, along with special education categorical aid and IDA flow-through grant. They were, by the three of them, more than half of the November receipts. November disbursements were in the amount of $1,987,004, which left total cash on hand as of December 1st, 2020 in the amount of $1,749,131. Taking a look at the December disbursements in the amount of $298,375. The December receipts, $2,608,023, which left us with cash on hand as of today, December 14th, $4,058,778. Any questions on that first page?
Okay.
Hearing none, going to the second page and looking at a review of the different funds. Fund 21, the only change was $3 in interest, which left $25,222 as of November 30th. Fund 3839, a difference of $194 in interest, which left a balance as of November 30th of $1,575,917. And just a note there relative to that Fund 39, we're looking at that will be paid sometime in March or April of 2021. And then that will be the end of our debt in Fund 39. Taking a look at Capital Expansion Fund 41, a change of $9 in interest, which left a balance of $74,245. Fund 46, our Capital Improvement Fund, $744 in interest, which then left a balance of $1,028,819. Just as a reminder, as of July of 21, we will be able to start accessing the funds that are in Fund 46 for capital improvement. And then the Employee Trust Fund 73, a change of $17 in interest, along with expenditures of $22,389, which left a balance $116,501. Any questions on the funds? We're looking for action as far as authorization of the check request.
Okay. Ken?
I would move that we approve the financial report and pay the accounts submitted in the amount of $1,061,649. Roll call vote, please.
I believe that's $694? $94. Okay.
I second.
A second by Pam.
Pam.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Adler. Stodola Essline.
Yes.
Gardebreck, yes. Engel.
Yes.
Lee. Ron, can you hear me? Harder? Yes. Strands?
Yes,
And we got
I was having
Ron.
trouble unmuting.
All right. 7-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on to reports and discussions. We have the Friend of Education Award, and I believe is Pam Jackson here?
She is.
Yes, there she is. I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. Would you be willing to do an introduction for the recipient? Yeah, if you would, please. Would you both please come to the microphone? Thank you. Pam, would you like the information that you submitted? Okay.
I hope not to talk for too long. Thank you for the opportunity to come here and honor this very worthy person tonight. I think everybody here probably has seen his work either around town or had some connection with Mike. He's been here. He and his wife Kelly made a commitment to our community when their children first started, and we graduated a valedictorian last year, which is a tribute to their parenting and to his parenting. I think that's a huge part of who he is in the community and something that we all know. But part of the reason that I nominated Mike was for the things that he does behind the scenes that we don't see very much. You know, we all see the big banners that make our town look great when people come for athletic events, things like that, and just his contributions with our Chamber of Commerce and having a building or business on our main street. But one of the things that impressed me the most about Mike was years and years ago, when I had the privilege of having both of his children in 4-year-old kindergarten, he joined our PIE organization at the elementary school. And funds were tight. I know there were some big numbers going around just a few minutes ago. That kind of made me think about what we were talking about tonight. But we were in need of something as simple as a surge protector, and we didn't have the money for it. And the next day, Mike walked in with no fanfare or no big thank you and just said, here's a surge protector for your new little kitchen in the elementary school. This will take care of what we need. And there have been countless times throughout the years when those kinds of little secret donations and supports for families in our community have happened. Most recently, we had some signage and things done for our playground, and he did that at cost for us. And those little things that happen over and over and over again are the reason that I really feel that he is truly a friend and has been a friend for a whole generation of our school district. And so I'm very glad that he's our neighbor and our friend and a member of our community.
So congratulations, Mike Calise. Mike, there's a plaque for you. I'll read what it says. We'll do this from afar. All right. To Mike Calise from MK Photography, in recognition of contributions to the betterment of education at Oconto Falls Area Schools, 2020 Friend of Education Award. So Debbie, should we just make sure he gets this now, or how do you want to do this?
I'll try. It's just a fancy phone case. Okay, is that what it is? It's just that makes
We'll do it in front of. As young as he always does.
I'll come down.
While we get ready for the picture, I just want to take a second to honor the Oconto Falls Agriculture Department and Mr. Walter Taylor, who has provided our Christmas decor up here on stage. As you can tell, the students and Mr. Taylor did a phenomenal job, so thank you, Mr. Taylor and the FFA and the Ag Department. And congratulations, Mike.
Mike, I don't think we're letting you get away that quick. You might have to,
Yeah, I
to
think-
say a few words.
Thank you. I don't know. I appreciate the recognition. I don't do the stuff I do for recognition. I enjoy helping the schools out. And, I really enjoy making the banners for the sports stuff. It's probably one of my favorite things to do right now. Kelly was a big supporter of the schools as well, and she'd be right here with me if she could. And I don't know. Thanks. I really appreciate it. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
I did not say that, but Mr. Harder reminded me that Mike's name will be added to a plaque in the district office too. And good catch, Clint, on asking Mike to speak. Thank you. And congratulations. All right. Next is the CISA 8 Board of Control update. I don't have anything earth-shattering to report, so I will wait until we have something better, and we'll come back next month. We're to the student representative report part. Is Ellie or Tori? Both are here. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, we're in December already. So first we got student council. Today and November 16th, we handed out hot chocolate, cappuccino, muffins, and donuts just to bring up the school spirit a little because I know we all have been kind of dragging along. We adopted a few families and went to donated to elderly nursing homes, and the students actually purchased the gifts and donated the money to make everybody's holiday special. We're working towards a COVID-safe activity block for Christmas on Friday, and just to reward the kids that are working hard. And we have a few pictures on the next slide of the donuts and all of us handing them out.
FBLA has been doing hunger food collections for the past reduced to
Excuse
1
me,
week versus
would
3
you
weeks.
pull your mask down there? Thank you.
Competitive events. We are working to get members signed up for this week for the Regional Leadership Conference that takes place within the new year.
And with the
Events
rubber
must
thing
be picked paid
I'm mute.
by Friday, December 11th. Member t-shirts are collected from the members. The sizes ordered. Member t-shirts, working on dates to hand out t-shirts, and the officer and team bonding. The officers decided to create their own shirts this year with the Circuit and HTV. This is a smaller yet fun project that got them working together and talking about and planning upon upcoming events. All right. FFA. They are signing up for the fire conference this week. It's going to be virtual for them, and the first round of rosters have been submitted. They're also signing up for their LDE and CDE groups, contest teams. They're all going to be virtual this next spring. And the officers are Hunter Strickland, Becca Christensen, Samantha Shelby Woods, Kylan Brabant, Dylan Shabilsky, Elizabeth Asher, and Gracie Van Meerbeck, so congratulations to them. Our drama club is competing virtually in the Wisconsin State Theater Festival December 10th. They received praise from the judges for presenting an energized and enjoyable show under the conditions caused by the pandemic. The team received an All-State Silver Award for their show with special recognition from the junior Peyton Keller, who's received an Outstanding Acting Award. This season ended December 13th with the parents' performance, who also were live streamed. Right. Band is really sad that they're missing their in-person. I'm sure choir is as well, because those are always really great. They're working hard to put great music together, and they're recording their pep band tunes so that they can still be played at the games, the home games. They're tweaking their pep band book project, so they're making additions and taking some things away to make the current pep band book of tunes better. Beginning preparations for the virtual solo festival. The choirs are keeping up their spirit during the holidays with festive songs and sharpening their musical knowledge. They also have been listening to a variety of special professional musical ensembles, making Christmas cards for the OFES students and sharing their love for singing. As for choir, looking forward to 2021, they will be preparing for the WSMA Virtual Solo and Ensemble Festival, continue to provide their national anthem soloists for the athletic events, and work together to bring out their best in each other, and they wish each other luck for a healthy new year. All right, and our club, the officers for NAHS, the president is Lauren, vice president Caitlin Steidel, treasurer Cleo Van Dornick, and then the art club president is Jaden Reed, vice president is Tim Cornett, and the treasurer for that is Ariana Slade. They're going to do a Santa's workshop December 17th, and they'll have pictures for us next month on that. Then crew will be touching base with the freshman class Tuesday the 15th and is planning to hold study nights in January for preparation of semester exams. All right, and the forensic team held its first informational meeting December 11th. The season prepared to be totally virtual for them this year. The students recorded and submitted their entries to be judged. There would be 4 opportunities to complete the rounds, as well as NEC conference tournament. And then clubs without us updates are the National Honor Society and Science Club. We have a little update on the virtual learning for the student survey that we sent out. We do want to keep in mind that the survey that we sent out was sent out to everybody in the high school, so whether they're fully online or they're with us in person and some online. So freshmen, 33.1% took it, sophomores, 26.3%, juniors, 16.1%, and seniors, 24.6%. So we have a little bit of a mix of the grades here. So we had a rating on the virtual learning. We had them say like 1 was terrible, like they don't like it at all, and 5 was great, like they want to be in like there all the time. So 1 through 2, whoever said that was like 45%, which is little below what we expected, but we're happy that things are going well for them. And like on the better side is 55%. And then we have a few positives on the virtual learning that we just saw a pattern in. So people like the shorter classes, more time to themselves. They get to sleep in later, so like an extra 30 minutes maybe. Shorter work days makes more time for homework and time with family. And then the downfalls and negatives are most people don't fully understand when we are being taught lessons through a computer. The screen time is a little overbearing for some people, and it causes them to not want to show up for classes. Like they think, oh, because we're online, it's only 35 minutes. We don't have to show up for this class just this one day. It's harder to keep track of assignments because we're not constantly being told. And sometimes it gets lost in the computer and the Schoology app, which it's going pretty well, but could be a little bit more organized, people say. And do you want to? 62.7% of students stated that they'd rather be in school over online learning. 19.5% said that they prefer virtual, and 17.8% don't really have a preference. Many students said that they were falling behind or failing. If it were your normal year, they wouldn't have been. Almost 40% said that they were. 44 said no, and then 15 put maybe as like they just didn't want to share their information. We also asked overall how they were. 1 as in not good and 5 great. 1 through 3 were 65.3%, which is not very good. And then 4 to 5 was 34.7%. One question that was brought up when I was talking to Miss Whitehorse was, right now the teachers are focused on who's failing. And like some people, when they're in school, you know, they have a hard time anyways, but the people that usually have AB average, they're falling completely behind, and they're having like D's, maybe F's, some C's, and people aren't used to that. So we want to know like what we can do for the future to help them as well, even if they're not failing, but they're used to having A's and B's. What can we do for them? But I think overall, having like the spirit and like passing out like breakfast for them, planning this upcoming Friday is really pushing people to get all their homework and their grades up so they can actually participate. So I think overall we're doing pretty good right now. Those are just some comments that we got from the students. Hopefully that helps a little bit. We did make it so Friday that students could not participate if they had 2 or more F's. So it pushes them to try to get their grades back up.
All right, thank you both for a report. We really appreciate hearing the student input. The amount of detail in the survey and the way it was presented with all of the responses and the various category breakdowns is very good, and we really appreciate the input. And I am certain that any chance that Student Council can help in this whole thing, I would suspect that we'll be looking at that. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go then to the District Administrator report. Dean, please.
First off, just want to reiterate, ladies, nice job with your presentation. Kudos to all the different activities that kids are involved in and having to work around some of the obstacles that COVID provides. So it's neat to see that we're still making things happen. And also in following through with that information from students, that's something that the board asked for here a couple months back. So they appreciate that very much. Looking at the month in review, since November, a few different things that have been going on from a district perspective. Many people received a communication from the district relative to what we would be doing for inclement weather. And I just wanted to touch on that real quick. We sent communication out to explain that we're still going to be implementing a snow day similar to how we've done it in the past. And we received some feedback. People were wondering why would we not just implement a virtual day? And the response to that is even on virtual days right now, we have 300 plus students that are still coming into the school district. We still run our full bus routes. We bring students in that have specialized educational needs, students who are at risk of failing, and we still have all of our staff coming in. So if we run into a situation where we drive roads at 4:30 or 4:45 in the morning and determine that the roads are not safe, we'll be making the decision to implement a snow day similar to what we've done in the past. And I just wanted to give that little bit of feedback as to why. We've also been involved in something called a New Hope Coalition. And this is a situation that has actually been spearheaded by HSHS Prevea and in coordination with multiple counties in our area, where they put together a grant proposal, and as part of that grant proposal received over $1 million to work towards addressing the opioid epidemic that is going on throughout our area of the state. And I just want to bring to the board's attention that multiple members of our buildings, pupil services team and administration are working as part of that coalition to try to work on this over the next couple of years. We've also been involved since our last board meeting, receiving feedback on the operational referendum survey. A little bit later in the meeting, Bill Foster of School Perceptions will be providing a briefing on that. Also wanted to give a bit of information relative to COVID trends that have been going on. Board members, you have in your packet, it's a document that has a yellow block up at the top that lists the dates for deer season, Thanksgiving, and virtual learning. And then there's a couple graphs of information that shows you what the numbers have been for close contact as well as for positive cases. And one of the things that we're wanting to draw attention to, we implemented what we call a virtual buffer after the Thanksgiving break. And one of the things that we wanted to take a look at was, did we notice anything as far as numbers? And not surprising, if you look at the time frame between the 18th of November and about the 6th or so of December, you'll see that there's a dip in the number of positive cases as well as a dip in close contacts, which again shouldn't be surprising because we had students learning in a virtual environment where approximately 25 to 30% are coming into the school. And so for the positive cases that we did have, we didn't have to put out a significant number of students that would have been a close contact had we been in face-to-face learning. In reviewing the data that was provided to us by Oconto County, there's actually, it's the blue form that's in your packet, and it just shows the number of confirmed and probable COVID-19 cases per day. And primarily the two vertical yellow lines show from deer hunting in the third week in November through Thanksgiving, and then it shows the spikes after Thanksgiving. And again, I don't know that we can absolutely say with certainty that these are due to the activities that were taking place during those dates, but that was a concern that we had, which is part of why we did the virtual buffer. The question came up earlier in this meeting about the January 4th timeframe, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the meeting. But seeing how we're looking at this data, one of the things that we wanted to do was to provide you with some information relative to make a decision about our last communication with families was that on January 4th, we have the intention of going back into our 4+1 model, which is face-to-face 4 days a week, with 1 day being virtual on Wednesdays. And essentially, we said to parents that unless you, the board, took an action to do something different than that, that's just what we planned for. We also said that we would be looking at data. This is what I'm talking about as far as feedback. Overall, from Oconto County, not specific to days of the week and what happened after Thanksgiving, we still have relatively high data. And what I mean by that, the burden, which is something that you hear quite a bit about, and we've been tracking that burden. 875, which is essentially 4 times higher than the highest risk threshold from the CDC. That's the bad news. The good news is that burden has come down from what we've been tracking. If you remember back, it was in the 1300s a month or so ago, and now we're at 875. So the number has come down, and yet we're still significantly higher than the highest risk threshold. If we take a look at percentage of cases, that high risk threshold is at 10%, we're currently at 37%. So again, we're more than 3 times higher than the high risk. Some of the other information that is provided by Oconto County talks about the number of cases that they're currently experiencing in inpatient beds in the community. 90% is the threshold, and we're currently at 83%. And as far as the intensive care, 90% is the threshold, and we're at 85. So as you can imagine, medical community is very concerned with the number of cases that they're dealing with, and ask that we continue to still be vigilant with our efforts to implement mitigation strategies. So a little bit of information in regards to what's going on with COVID right now. One of the things that want you to keep that in mind when we get to that portion of the meeting in making a decision as to whether or not to implement a 1-week virtual buffer on January 4th. So it's critical that I just want to make sure that everybody understands the intent is not to talk about going virtual for any long period of time. It's simply looking at a buffer, a 1-week potential virtual June 4th or January 4th to the 8th. Right now, we're scheduled to come back face to face, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting. In talking about what's going on with COVID right now, we still need to continue to be vigilant to sustain the mitigation efforts that we're involved in. Even though in some aspects of the data, our numbers are starting to come down, they are still not good. They're still significantly higher than what the CDC considers highest risk. So we continue to reach out and ask families and parents, staff members to be thoughtful of all the things that we're doing, not just what we're doing each day at work, but also what we're doing on weekends, and especially with things like the holidays that are coming up. Something else that I need to make the board aware of as part of my presentation is we had one of the board members brought forward some concerns, and as such, my responsibility is to share that with you, the board, and then you need to determine whether or not you would like further attention brought to each of these situations and whether or not there's any action that you would like taken. One of the concerns that have been brought forward was regarding racial equity, and this was actually brought to you, the board, in an email back on June 4th. I was included on that email, and board member was concerned that no action had been taken. So I made that person aware that I would bring it to you, the board. The concern was concerning whether or not the board should be putting together some type of a task force in regards to racial injustice in our district. I'll let you know, the board, that when I received the email, I shared it with Terry Olson, Pupil Services Director. We've been in discussion of how we can address this from a long-term basis, which would include reviewing district policy as well as handbook language, trying to identify staff members within the schools that would have an interest in this area, and then working together as a group to review those policies, determine if we need to modify language, come up with training for staff members. I think Terry said it best when she said this isn't real glamorous work, but it's important work that needs to be done. It's going to take time, and it's going to take people working together. So that's the work that's been happening behind the scenes since June 12th when I shared that with Terry. So the question on that issue is whether or not you, the board, are in alignment with that activity, that action, or if you would like something different to occur.
Are there, you mentioned that there are a number of issues, Dean. Would you prefer that we respond one at a time as you bring them forward, or what would be your
either way?
thoughts, anyone? Or would Ron or Sharon, who are joining us virtually, have any preference on how should we address this one at a time, whether or not we want to maybe put it on a calendar later down the road, or what we should do?
Hi, this is Sharon on Zoom. I would say we take the issues one at a time and see how we want to proceed. I think it's like, racial justice, it's a huge issue, and it all came forward when the Floyd, unjustly death, it seemed, really created a lot of concern around this. And even though I don't feel it was handled well throughout the country with riots and so forth, still think it's a really huge issue. And we are so predominantly white that I don't think we can, without really studying it and looking closer, I don't think we can really understand the racial injustice that people experience. When I was talking to Dean, I explained that my husband's children were half Chinese, half white, half Chinese. And it wasn't until they were adults that they said they did experience discrimination and issues in our schools in Oconto Falls. So, I don't think that's gone away. And I just think it's something we should look a little closer at.
Ron, did you have comments?
Okay, I was having trouble unmuting again. Yes, I agree that's an important issue and it needs to be taken up. And I'm not saying that we necessarily should be pushing it to the side, but I'm wondering if we have enough on our plate right now. And what Terry's thoughts on that are, if she has time to go through that right now, or if that's something maybe we could set off a few months till things clear up here a little better. Because I think we are pushing our administration pretty hard right now. What are anybody else's thoughts?
Anybody else here have a comment?
I would say that maybe as long as Terry is working on this and other people in the district are working on this, I think it's an important issue as well. Perhaps we schedule a time when she could kind of tell us what's going on so far with what they're working on, maybe in a couple of months or something. Again, not trying to push things off, but a short update might be nice.
That sounds
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi, this is Sharon again. I'd be okay with that. Is there a way that I, as the board member that's quite interested in this, could participate in that process, or with Terry, or whatever's necessary?
Okay, let's see what, Ken, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of concur with what Pam mentioned. It is an important issue. If we do have problems, it needs to be addressed. But I think that we need to have people on our staff that have some experience and expertise in that area to look at it and see what kind of recommendation they would make to us to address it.
Okay. Adam, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with what Ken had to say too. It has to be a matter of relying on staff members that have more background on it to provide thoughts to us. I like the idea, and I don't know how it works within the board member, and I don't know if Dean could relay on, Sharon being part of that to help out with what input they have or staff members have to be able to provide it direct to the board.
Okay, thank you. Clint, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is I work for a pretty large Fortune 100 corporation, and we took it pretty seriously, internal, and a lot of the business leaders, we went so far as to put together some kind of consortiums or groups of, racial diverse individuals, and had workshops with them about, what did they experience growing up? What did they experience in the workplace? How do they think they've been impacted? And out of that, I think it opened up a lot of other people's eyes inside the organization that really didn't realize that people they worked with every single day, that was the experience they had growing up or even currently in the workplace. And the dialogue has definitely helped. So I'm not trying to solve it here. I think Terry will come up with some great ideas, but one recommendation may be, maybe not so much for younger students, but those that are in our high school or maybe even middle school environment, have we considered bringing, some racially diverse individuals together, have a discussion? What have they experienced? What's their experience with school? What sort of feedback can we get from them? Because I think there's twofold. One is, what can we do to make the community at large that we live in more accepting of diverse individuals? And second, how do we build the capacity of all of our young people that when they're going to go out into either the workforce or off to college and become, maybe in contact with a much more diverse melting pot than what we experience here in northern Oconto County or mid Oconto County, how they can look at things differently as they go on. So I think it's something we shouldn't necessarily push off. I think we should say, how could we creatively do it that doesn't maybe require a huge amount of administrative effort, but we can learn along the way. That would be my comment.
If I could summarize, I think what I'm hearing is that we think this would be we should look at this issue. I'm seeing heads nod. And I am hearing that it would be something to ask administration to continue looking at what a plan might be for how to move forward. And at that point, it could be a recommendation of some sort with maybe more study or more whatever. Would it be fair, fellow board members, if we maybe look towards, and I don't want to push this off indefinitely, certainly, but I'm also looking at some other things that are happening in the community right now, but to say, like, closer toward the end of the school year, to start looking at some plan or at least some framework that would create a plan eventually.
I think we could potentially come to the board mid-late spring with some information. And I think that would be basically a kicking off, a stepping off point for how we move forward with this work.
Okay. So we'll look at that maybe in a few months then, mid to late spring. All right.
Dan, if I
Yes.
could add
Go
just
ahead,
a
Ken.
comment. I think Clint had an excellent idea or suggestion. And if we do pursue it in that way, I think one of the things to remember is that diversity involves more than just race. And so I think that, in our situation where, not that it's not important, but race may be less significant an issue in terms of numbers and proportions of people than in others. But economics diversity comes into play, cultural, other aspects. So I think it ought to be open to look at any diversity issues.
I just took a note on that.
Okay, thank you. You had other issues, Dean.
Yep, a couple more that were brought to my attention. Concerns regarding new board member orientation. This board member shared that they didn't feel that they were treated well during the onboarding process. Shared concerns and wanted me to talk with you, the board, relative to our process and whether or not we needed to make changes. So what I bring to the board is we currently have policy language, policy 142.7, regarding orientation. And the expectations within that talks about the fact that you, the board, in essence, are responsible for bringing a new board member along, making them aware of responsibilities of the board. It also talks about during their term that they have access to the board policy manual and budgetary information, as well as be invited to have a sit down with the board president and district administrator at their discretion, be made aware of board functions and policies and procedures, and encourage their attendance with new board member orientation. So currently things that we do is we bring new people on board, we bring them into district office before they, as part of taking their oath, making them aware, basically doing like a mini training on how to access board documents, making sure that they have their onboarding process of getting passwords and things like that. Making them aware of WASB trainings, which our new board members have attended in the past. Making sure that they get identified with somebody on the board that can act as a mentor. Having an opportunity to sit down with me or Ron at their discretion, and then offered any follow-up training as well with WASB. As you guys know, we send emails out to you making you aware of when there's WASB training. So that's currently what we do. So the question to the board is whether or not you feel we need to move forward with modifications to that process.
Can I speak? This is Sharon on Zoom.
Go ahead, Sharon.
That is not what happened with me. So that might be our policy, but that did not occur with me. And I just want to make sure that everybody that comes on board feels welcome, has the opportunity to ask any questions they need, just feels supported. And I just feel like a lot of that wasn't. So if we follow that, that would be great. If we follow the policy, it probably is sufficient, but just want to tell you where I'm coming from.
Anybody else have any comments about this? Do we need to discuss this at a later date? Do we have enough information available at this point for board members within the structure that we have now?
Suggestion I guess I would have, if a member felt there were deficiencies in the onboarding process for themselves, possibly what we should or could consider would be, I don't know what you call it, an ad hoc committee involving anyone that has those issues or concerns to look at them and possibly come back with some suggestions for additions or changes to that process.
Sound okay to everybody?
I like that idea, Ken.
Any other comments? Okay, I think then maybe what we'll do is leave it at that there is a structure in place, and if somebody is, we'll follow what we have. And if somebody feels they'd like more information or a different thing, they can speak up and talk to the board president or to Dr. Hess, and we'll provide that further mentoring. Is that reasonable? Okay. Is there another issue, Dean?
Then the last one that was brought to my attention was in relationship to board member appreciation. It was shared that there was a concern that I, as the superintendent, do not acknowledge the work of the board enough. Members shared that they didn't feel appreciated and shared that we didn't acknowledge the board enough during Board Appreciation Week. Requested that after COVID settles down, that we think about creating board cookouts, socials, and other activities to bring the board together. Possibly things like birthday cards or other forms of appreciation could be shared with the board.
Thoughts, anybody? Adam?
I don't really have any thoughts on that. I'm here to try and help the district and don't need any additional appreciation. I think a lot of people understand right now what we're going through as far as a community, as a school district, and everybody's trying to work through it. So I don't have any issues. So,
Okay.
or further thoughts, to tell you the truth on that.
All right, thank you. Clint, anything?
No, similar.
Okay. Pam?
I mean, the little things with cupcakes and whatever at board meetings is sure plenty for me. I mean, it's nice to be appreciated. I think that my work on the board has been appreciated and will continue to be so. So what's happening now is fine.
Okay. Ken?
Yeah, I think too, the work that the board has done, both from the standpoint of the superintendent, administrative staff, the other staff, the professional and other staff, is appreciated, and that's been expressed as far as the get-together kind of things. One of the things we have to be concerned about is the perception of walking quorums. If you get too many board members together, there's that issue that we would have to deal with. And I think that, I guess, my impression is, having served on the board for a while, is that the last year or couple of years, I think the little things like the cupcakes and a couple of other things that have been, that we've seen are an increase over There's physical kind of things
Yeah.
that were provided for appreciation. And I guess I view those as nice but not necessary.
Sharon, do you have a comment?
I do, thank you. I guess I feel, Dean, that you recognize us at the board level at board meetings. I didn't know that all these issues were going to come up at a board meeting, but I find it disheartening. For example, during the School Board Appreciation Week, again, I don't need a pat on the back, but I found it kind of interesting that I maybe got 15, 20 emails or texts from people. And I didn't, if the cupcakes were from you, I didn't realize it, but I just, as our leader, I just was a little disheartened by that.
Ron, do you have a comment?
I'm pretty good with what's going on. I guess I don't really need any more special recognition. So I'm good to go.
Okay, and I guess I'd like to indicate that I have a comment too on it. It occurs to me that the school board is actually the boss, if you will, of the administrator, and it calls into question for me whether or not we as a board recognize our administrator properly. I think we've got it kind of turned around. So I think it was good that we aired this, and I think we can move on as we have. It seems like there's a majority that says we're good to go, but thank you for the opportunity to discuss this.
Okay.
So thank you.
And I have one more piece then that
All right, thank you.
wanted to make the board aware that there's been a change at the state level relative to quarantine, and it's actually started at the CDC, which then was taken on by the Department of Health Services at the state level, and has come down to Oconto County's level in regards to quarantine options for close contacts. And so you were provided with a document in your board notes to take a look at. In a nutshell, we've been up to this point required to have 14 days of quarantine for close contacts. And now the CDC/DHS has given options. And ultimately, Oconto County has come out and said they would prefer that we continue to utilize the 14-day. They see that as the lowest risk of spreading COVID. However, they can understand that in some situations, school districts would consider the medium risk. And so what we've done up to this point is we've reviewed this, and operationally, we've made a change that we're implementing the 10-day quarantine for academics. We believe that it's a level of risk that we're willing to accept, given the very low percentage of COVID positives that happen after the 10th day, which is information, again, that was provided to us by the CDC. So for students and staff in an academic setting, we're going to change from the 14 to a 10-day quarantine. We'll be making families aware of that as those situations arise. However, we're going to maintain the 14-day quarantine relative to athletics or any activities where kids are in physical contact with each other. And really, that's the deciding factor on maintaining the 14 in that setting. Because part of what the CDC has brought forward is an expectation that if you go below the 14, that you be able to maintain social distancing as well as a lot of the other mitigation strategies. There's no way that we can do that. It's difficult enough to do it in an academic setting. We know we can't do it in an athletic setting. So I wanted to make the board aware of that. If at some point the board feels that they want to bring that forward, we can bring it up in a future meeting. But from an operational standpoint, we needed to make that decision when this came down last week in order to start processing through each day's positive cases. So any questions on that or thoughts or concerns?
Anyone? Okay. All right, thank you.
One thing that needs to be brought forward is the April 2021 board elections, and the current incumbents that are up for re-election potentially would be Clint Gardebreck, Pamela Engel, and Kenneth Harder. And information on that can be obtained through Debbie at the office if you're involved in non-candidacy, which that would be up to you. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. And then the last thing as part of my report is making you, the board, aware that we need to have a WASB state convention delegate selected by you for the virtual convention.
And that information needs to be submitted fairly soon, I would imagine, correct? Could you remind me, please, which board members are going to attend the virtual convention this year? Debbie, do you have that?
I don't have it at the top of it.
Okay, so Sharon, Ken, and myself will be virtually attending the convention.
We made Cheryl be a delegate last year.
Sharon was, so.
You forced me.
Did you have a good time doing that, Sharon?
Oh, just a delightful time.
Now that you are experienced, would you like to do it again?
Oh, that'd be just fine.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Unless we want to have a runoff with Ken? He's saying no. Okay,
All right.
all right,
thanks.
thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, and anything else, Dean, your report? Okay, thank you very much. In old business, we have a donation list to review. It was provided in the packet. Board members, I believe you can see that, and per policy, we would be seeking an approval of to accept those donations.
I will make a motion to accept the donations with thanks for those that contribute to the district and help out.
Okay, thank you. A motion by
I'll
Pam,
second the motion.
a second by Ken. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0.
Can I just jump in real quick? I want to acknowledge, we have a tremendous community. The staff in our buildings, the community members, students, the amount of effort that goes in every year with donations, whether it be donations that occur outside of this time of year, but even at this time of year with the Holiday for Hope, which was started many, many years ago, my understanding at Oconto Falls Elementary School. It continues, and it benefits a significant number of people in our community that are in need. So for all the folks who were part of those donations, thank you so much for what you do. It's extremely appreciated.
And for those who can't see the list, it is small font, and it is about 1.5 sides of a sheet. It's incredible. Thank you very much. All right, we have the second reading of some policies that actually were approved for a first reading last month. I guess I'll just start to see, did any board members have any further questions or any concerns about, there was an update called 29.2, there was 29.2 technical corrections, and a third group was called March through September 2020 special update. So we'd be looking potentially for approval of a second reading of those policies here at this meeting. First of all, did anybody have any concerns after last month? Okay, hearing none.
I would move that we approve for the second reading of update 29-2, 29-2 technical corrections, and March, September 2020 special update.
And I second that motion, Pam.
Okay, a motion by Ken, a second by Pam to approve all three groups of updates as noted. All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries 7-0. All right, we have new business, the high school and district-wide utilities, building use for youth organizations. And
I've asked Mr. Jerry Monahan if he would come up and brief the board regarding this request. Before Jerry gets started, it's my understanding it's Jerry's birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Jerry.
Yeah, so speed up, the ribs are still in the crock pot.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Jerry.
birthday to you.
All right, thanks. To you. Happy birthday, dear Jerry.
Happy birthday to you.
All right. You're welcome.
So I'm here to put in a request for opening up our buildings to some of our youth activities. Just to review, our school district buildings have been closed to outside groups going back to last March. And we've made steps along the way to bring our students back, start different activities. We did have some non-school groups use our outdoor facilities, our baseball, softball, or our softball fields this summer, our football fields this fall. Now there's more groups that would like to start using our gymnasiums and wrestling rooms. So I was approached in October to start discussing this, and got some guidance saying that we were going to come back in December to present to you about some possibilities of opening up these spaces for January. You should have received a bunch of information from youth wrestling and youth basketball with some of their ideas to open up the facilities. And the thing I want you to know right away is those are some ideas that we still have to put in stone if you allow us to move forward. So I paraphrased and came up with some 8 bullet points that I think would kind of guide us in the right direction. So my first bullet point up there is that we want to mimic what we've been required to do through our WIAA sports. So, some of our cohorting and our mitigating, and then if you eventually get down the road to fans, same type of expectations. So with that, the things they would do are going to look totally different than we've ever done before. So if we are to move forward, basketball practice like we had last year is going to look a lot different than what it does this year. Even at the high school level, we've done that. We're using the old gym, but we don't have 3 full teams in there. We don't feel it's a big enough space to put 30 people. So some of these expectations, it's going to look so different than what they've done. If you read the information from the groups, they know and they are doing very well in their thoughts about grouping and cohorting the kids. They know they're not going to take and have all the youth wrestlers in the wrestling room like they've done in the past. We know in youth basketball, they're not going to bring up 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th and do a skills session in the gymnasium. They know those things aren't going to happen. And their ideas are really good on the right track. Bullet point number 4 is probably one of the biggest items. Is in past, and I was one of those parents last year, my daughter played middle school basketball at the same time she played on the hoops club team. So they would play Greenville at 4:30 on a Tuesday, and then on Saturday they'd go an all-day tournament down in Valders. Okay, that's something we do not want to do. As a school system, if we have girls playing basketball in January, we want them to just be playing on our team and not going and playing in another tournament all weekend long in some other venue. It's the same thing with wrestling. We've always had it where if we had a meet here on a Thursday, then those kids would go wrestle in a huge tournament not related to school on a Saturday. We don't want that. We don't want them going some other place that might not have as many restrictions as us or as cohorted as we are, coming back then to us at practice on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So that's a big change that we hope can be managed. We might lose some kids. They might just say, we're going to go do our own thing and go on a different team, or go wrestle with the club team and not the school team. And I understand that, but that's a recommendation that I think will make it as safe for our students who are in math class and then still going to practice with their same kids, and not going to some place that is not as safe. I'm recommending that they use our facilities in January for practices, and we see where we are in the end of January. If maybe there's a chance we can get a dual wrestling match or a game against Oconto on a Friday night when the gym is empty for fourth graders. So I think we need to wait and see what is happening in our world, what is happening with our school, before we say, hey, go out and play games against other schools. You know, and just get January to get these kids running around and playing, because some of them haven't had the opportunity at all. If you were not a youth football player or you didn't play summer baseball, you haven't had an organized activity since March. And I feel for those kids, and this would give them some opportunity. And then so look maybe down the road in February, March to playing some games. Gym space. Not every school in our district probably should have practice in their gym, right? OFIS, half the gym is used for lunch every day. Maybe that space isn't used at all. It's crossed off the list and they're not in there, okay? But our field house is open all day long on a Saturday. Can we get kids in there from 8 to 9:30, and then 10:30 till noon, and then 2 to 4, and 6 to 8 at night, and let them run around in that big space, and there's 20 kids in there shooting? I think it's a doable activity. Those groups' leadership would sit down through a meeting that we're talking about number 8, and look at the space and work with that principal to say, here's some space for you. We can make this safe, but it's not going to be like it's been in the past. I'm asking that if this moves forward, that a week from Monday, next Monday night, I have a meeting here with the leadership for youth wrestling and youth basketball, and they bring in their coaches, and we have a good heart-to-heart discussion. Because I'm honest, I'm coaching basketball. This whole mask thing isn't easy, right? I've had discussions with Dr. Hess this morning. It isn't easy. You know, it falls off your face when you talk. Now try to run and breathe at the time. You know, you're sweating, and someone just elbowed you, and you want a drink of water, and you are breathing heavy. This is not easy, and we have to be diligent, and they got to understand that it's a constant battle. That every day, as coaches, not only are you trying to teach a skill and teach them a lifelong lesson, we also got to teach them to pull their mask up, which is not normal for any of us. So these efforts that they want to put place, we have to come in here, we have to talk about it, and then realize that at any point it could all stop. Just like we realize in the WIA world, it can stop tomorrow, okay? Our games could get canceled tomorrow. We have to understand that they also have to keep working hard, and if things change, it all could stop too. So I'm here asking that with these efforts of the groups, which have put in a lot of time, to allow us to work with the building principals to find some space that's not interacting at the same times of our activities in the school, and we're not going to be crossing paths, and we can isolate groups and they can use the facilities starting after the new year. I'm looking to say starting January 4th. I think that's the date we come back to take the next couple weeks, map it out, and allow some of our little kids to get back into doing some things of running and jumping and sweating and trying to get to some type of normalcy in their lives. So that's my ask tonight for you to allow us to do that. Another gradual step, because it's basically, I've been here every month taking small steps each month. And I think with their asking me, I'm now asking you to take that next step. Questions?
Thoughts, anyone? Any questions for Jerry?
Couple things that I wanted to bring up to the board. First off, I want to tell Jerry, as well as John, appreciate the work that you're both doing in this arena. And it's different than ever before. So as Jerry mentioned, it's not falling back on experiences from the past because everything has to be modified. And I appreciate things that Jerry has just brought up and just want to kind of piggyback on a couple of those. I think that what's being proposed has merit, and I can appreciate providing this opportunity. With that stated, I feel it's going to be critical. Jerry brought several of these up. Communication is going to be really important. And the things that Jerry has in this, based on the information that has come from the couple different youth activity groups, I think they're on the right track. In thinking of that, there's still a lot of specifics that will have to get nailed down. And so I would ask that if you, the board, do take action to approve the request, as Jerry stated, it will be critical then for Jerry and John to work with building principals to develop the who, what, when, where, how, that we can support the requests, and then go back and work with the leadership of the two organizations to make sure we're all on the same page. And I would throw out to the leadership of the organizations, we're really going to need your patience, your understanding, and your teamwork, because human nature is that we always want more for our kids. And I totally understand that. We want more for our students. It's important, I think, as Jerry brought up, that we get this thing rolling and we start it relatively slow and we get our kids a chance to get back into the gyms. Somebody put in one of the requests, the focus is on practice and fundamentals, and I couldn't agree more. It is difficult. I give our coaches a ton of credit. I give our players a ton of credit. Normally, playing ball is very, very difficult, and now we're asking them to do it with masks. I will say this. Jerry alluded to, we're needing to work with some of our young people because they're struggling with the masks. And one of the things we have to do, just like we do in the classrooms, is we need to bring to their attention what the expectation is and then consistently support them in that. And anybody who doesn't work with young people, somebody made a comment to me that on a challenging day, it can be very challenging. Well, now you add trying to make sure they're following the mask protocols, and it's just that much more difficult. But together, I'm pretty confident we can make that happen. We just have to be consistent with our young people. And so I'm confident that if building principals and Jerry and the organizational leadership work together, we should be able to come up with something that we can then consistently implement and then modify as needed. We hope that the COVID numbers don't change for the worse. If they do, we might have to modify. If they go the way we want and it gets less, then maybe we can modify it in a different direction with less requirements. The other thing I wanted to throw out is Jerry started with the fact that we're not allowing other groups into our buildings. That's an absolute spot-on statement. And so this is going outside of that for the obvious reason that it's our students. But I would throw out there that it's still critical that we stay the course with all the other mitigations that we have going on.
Thoughts, comments, questions? Jerry, you have a good track record. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I really like hearing that one of the focuses would to include students this time who maybe didn't have an opportunity in other sports, maybe have a focus. I think you had mentioned that. It would allow kids who hadn't had an earlier opportunity to get together.
Yeah, because some kids only play basketball, so they haven't done anything through the baseball or this is their thing. And so, quite honestly, some of them haven't done anything since we left in March.
So it does pull others into the ability to have some activities.
I would agree that Jerry has done an outstanding job in all the aspects. As he said, he's taken kind of baby steps as he's gone through this, and I think he's been successful, and he has the fact that he has communicated effectively with coaches, with parents, with students, and with parents of these various groups since we started this is a testament to his leadership. And I think the fact that, you know, we've not had outbreaks, at least that I'm aware of, that can be traced back to kids being involved in any of the sports activities that we've had. I would be inclined to move to approve his plan for going forward with the winter athletics, youth athletics.
You said you were inclined. Was that in fact a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I would second.
All right, there's a motion by Ken and a second by Clint to allow Jerry to move forward with administration and building principals to put together a plan that would allow some limited activities back in our buildings after the first of the year. Is that the ask? Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Jerry, and happy birthday.
I think as we come down, hopefully, we're on the downhill side of having to deal with this darn COVID, but you know, we've asked this before, and some of the other groups, it appears from what the girls indicated tonight that some of the members of some of the student organizations are able to do some things, but I think we want to keep that in mind if opportunities would present themselves for use of the facilities by those groups for some of their activities. We should look into that also.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, I believe the curriculum committee met earlier to look at the next school year, 2021 to 2022 high school course offerings. Is that report directly from Pam? Okay,
I get to
go
talk
ahead.
today.
All right.
We met with Dean, with Mr. Moore, and also with some members of the social studies and English departments. There are 4 new course offering proposals that we talked about during that meeting late this afternoon. The English department is, and I'm sure you've all read, so I'll kind of summarize, is proposing a bestsellers literature with a critical lens course. These go along with the changes that were made in the English department that were implemented this year, and for options for students to take classes. The bestsellers class is for juniors and seniors. These options were primarily put in place for seniors to have other options after grade 9, grade 10, and grade 11 English. This is a reading-based course, and it does integrate other skills in the language arts like writing, speaking, and presenting, but it's looking at best-selling literature. This course has some costs to implement, buying the books, and some hours of curriculum pay, but that's not a lot of money. And it's a course that's offered every other year, opposite of journalism. So you have an issue of making sure you have enough kids for courses and also kids having options for each year. If there's any other questions about that, please ask. I'll go through the other 3 first. The second is an NWTC English composition class. It replaces technical English. Those students that take this and pass it would have credit at NWTC and or other technical colleges and possibly, and also some universities. We have a new English teacher in the department, and she is certified to be doing this with NWTC, and certification is important with having these NWTC coordinated classes. So that's very important. And so this is an option for kids thinking of going to technical college to get a class out of the way, and it doesn't cost them any money. And this one really has very little cost. some summer curriculum writing, and the cost of a sub for the teacher to go to a spring summit where they talk about teaching this class and teaching and learning. The social studies department, Margot Stewart, for many years, and people remember Margot, I even remember her, did some work with her when I was working in another district, had a course that is also now being integrated with a social issues class, I believe it's called, and to talk about conflicts and social crises. And if you look at the explanation, it's just historical underpinnings of major political, social, economic events affecting the United States and the world through the 21st century, starting with the build-up to World War I, you know, through the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, looking at social upheaval in the 1960s, evaluating modern conflicts, et cetera. So its basic question is, how does the past influence the present? So there are two courses that pretty much have been put together to create this course, if I'm remembering correctly from our discussion. Again, it's a half-credit course. It's for juniors and seniors. And this has 20 hours of summer curriculum writing. It doesn't need a textbook because there's a software that's currently used in the district that can be used for the materials for that class. And then there's a history through literature and film. My understanding is there's been a summer school course kind of like this, and now it's being expanded on. And this is to what extent are historical fiction and film legitimate historical sources, changing perspectives in historical events, and what role social media plays in our understanding of history. Sounds real timely to me. So this is also a new course being proposed by the Social Studies Department. These are the only 4 new courses being proposed for next year. There are other departments looking at courses. For example, I understand business is looking at some, but they're just not ready to be developed yet. The committee is recommending that all 4 of these classes be approved for next year, and I would offer the motion to that end.
All right, so we have a motion by Pam to approve these 4 classes as outlined. Is there a second?
Second motion.
A second by Ken. Any discussion at this point before we go to a vote? Adam, I believe you're also on that committee?
Yes, I was just going to say, was Adam and Ken and I were the board members there.
Well, and I want to make the board aware too, high school principal Mr. Dan Moore is available right now via Zoom if anybody has any specific questions for Mr. Moore.
Okay, thank you. Adam, any comments from the committee level?
There are 4 good options that they're looking to add to the curriculum, and they all look like good options to us. We all discussed them pretty good in the meeting. I do like the blend of, we have one that's added to be able to have AP credits for NWTC, which is nice to have a staff member to be able to do that. But then even other ones like history through literature and film, where it's might not necessarily be an AP type class, but it's something that might have a good amount of interest to other students. So I think it is a good mixture of classes that they're proposing.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions for Mr. Moore while we're here?
Hi, this is Sharon on Zoom again. I just had one question on that class, History Through Literature and Films. Can someone explain why the prerequisite is must have attempted a couple classes? I'm not sure what that means.
That might be a Mr. Moore question. Dan, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, this is Dan. Go ahead.
Now, if you can answer that question, please do about.
Sure. We had talked about it because in the past, during the summer, when students have taken a similar course, it had been for credit recovery oftentimes. And we didn't want to see it being a replacement for world history or U.S. history at the 9th and 10th grade level. Okay. So there's going to be a heavy writing component to it. And so we want it to be a rigorous social studies elective course.
Okay, one of the questions I had, Dan, was attempted. I don't quite get that. Why is that word attempted those classes? I just versus like taken it or earned credit or,
I can jump in on that, Sharon. I think
Sure.
what Dan was just sharing was that the words attempted is saying that the goal is to have students involved in both world history and U.S. history. The goal is to have them take those courses and to be successful. The goal is not to have them take history through literature to replace either one of them. On the flip side, if they take world history or U.S. history and fail the course, they could take history through literature and film as a way to try to recover that credit.
thank you. That makes sense. Thanks, Dean.
Yep.
Thank you, Dean.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll go to the vote. Everybody understand the motion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. Thank you. We have an early graduation request.
I'm going to jump in real quick. I apologize. I wanted to say thanks to Mr. Moore and the high school staff for all of your efforts to put those together. That's all over and above all the things you do every day and your efforts to continuously try to make things better. So, Mr. Moore, please pass that along to folks in the English and Social Studies department, as well as the ones that are working on other classes for the future.
I'll do that. I would just also add, if I could briefly, that earlier in the meeting, there was some discussion about equity and trying to spend some time on that issue. And if you look at 3 of these 4 courses, equity and looking at things through a critical lens is really going to be a part of those courses, whether it be the bestseller course, the crises course, or the literature, history through literature and film course. So as I talked to both of the departments, that was definitely in their minds as they were proposing the courses and as they'll be writing curriculum this summer.
Thank you. Good information.
Dan.
All right, then we have the early graduation request.
And Dan, if you're still on, I would have you walk the board through the early grad requests that they have in front of them.
Unfortunately, Dean, I don't have that paperwork in front of me.
Okay, that's okay. I can actually do it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Board, you should have Darren's paperwork in front of you, and it includes similar paperwork to what you reviewed here in the past for requests for early graduation. You can see that Darren's counselor has gone through and made sure that they're aware of the expectations as well as the parents. They have signed off on that. They've given you the application document that goes through and lists the credits that have been earned up to this point. And Ann Shallow, the counselor, as well as Mr. Danny Smith, have signed off on this request. And pending your approval, we're asking that you consider this early grad request.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this early request? Or
I would move that we approve the early graduation request.
okay, motion by Ken. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Sharon.
A second by Sharon. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we have a contract approval with possible action for Abigail Jaden.
And we're asking the board to consider approving Abby Jaden's position joining the Oconto Falls School District in both choir and music at the middle school with middle school students as well as elementary music. So it's a dual position. Abby's been working in a rural district in our area and doing an outstanding job. Applied, went through our process, is a top candidate, and as you can see from her application materials, comes highly recommended.
Okay.
I would move that we approve Ms. Jaden's contract.
There's a motion by Clint for contract approval. Is there a second?
I will second. It's Pam.
Second by Pam. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. We have some referendum resolution work to do now tonight.
Before we get to the resolution, I had alluded to earlier in the meeting that we were involved in working with school perceptions to conduct a survey with community members and staff members. And Bill Foster is going to be walking us through that through Zoom. And so, Bill, if you can take the reins, that'd be fantastic.
All right, let's see if this can work. Again, I'm Bill Foster. I'm with School Perceptions. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and Corey's going to run the presentation, so we'll kind of go through kind of one slide at a time. So again, I guess I was up there in 2016. So I'm the same guy that was there last time. I just have a little more gray hair than I had last time. But I'm been with School Perception since their founding in 2002. So the second slide, we are a Wisconsin-based company. We have done a lot of surveys. We do a lot of staff, student, parent surveys. And now we're up over 700 community surveys for the sake of strategic planning and referendum preparation. So slide 3 goes to specifically your survey, which went out in November. Folks could take it online or via paper. And as of the day of writing this report, we had just over 1,300 responses, where 648 came back via paper. And I actually went back and looked in 2016, we had 895 surveys taken. So there's a lot of bad things about this pandemic, but apparently one good thing is it's good for survey responses. People actually are taking our survey. And so typically we see a response rate of about 18 to 20%. You were up at 24%, which is outstanding, which gives us a statistical margin of error of plus or minus 2.7%. So when we go to the next slide, actually slide 5, which deals with what is your age. When I look at this slide, I like to go to the far right. I want to make sure that our senior citizens are well represented in the data, which they are. So 28% or better than 1 out of 4 of the folks who took the survey were seniors, where our 18 to 25-year-old folks were less represented. But when it comes to voting, this is exactly what it looks like. Our younger folks don't tend to vote as much as our seniors do. So this is one could argue a bias, but this is a bias we look for to make sure that, again, our seniors are well represented. The next slide goes to residency. Do you live in the district? And here 92% of our sample live in the district, with 8% saying no, which raises the question, who are those folks taking our survey who don't live in our district? And the answer primarily comes from 2 areas. One is staff. So we did ask all staff members to take the survey, but if they don't live in the district, obviously they say no there, as well as potentially parents that choose to open enroll their children into the district. So that 8% is important because we're going to remove those folks from the funding support question. They cannot vote on the referendum if there were to be one. So we're not going to count their responses as it relates to any financial questions. The next slide goes to municipalities and which city or township do you reside? And we had representation from absolutely every city and township, including the town of Chase. I don't think we've got too many folks in the town of Chase, but we did have 1 or 2 people take our survey. And we checked and we found this is pretty representative or very representative of your district. So we're happy with that. The next slide goes to looking at employees, and we had 185 employees take the survey, or 14%. And the next slide, we can see we had 520 parents, or about 40% of our sample were parents of the Oconto Falls School District. Now that's going to be important in just a bit. We're going to look at subgroups, and I'll explain how we're going to do that when we get to the financial support question. So the next couple slides that deal with the financial background information, this was the actual information that was contained in the survey that created the context for people to respond to. So when we scratch our heads in January and say, what did that, can anyone get a copy of that survey? Well, this is actually what was in the survey. So it talked about a little background in terms of what you've gone through, some of the cuts you've made, as well as the community supporting a non-recurring operational referendum in 2017. The next slide talked about the fact that that is scheduled to expire, and which will create a budget deficit for the district. However, you're in a good financial situation in that some of your interest expenses and debt obligations will be declining. So then we put that together in slide 13, which kind of shows the debt levy in the future, which will create an opportunity to invest in the district in terms of the operating referendum while minimizing the tax impact of a potential operating referendum. So then we get to the funding support, and what we came up with in your case were really three options to test. Option one was a $3.3 million with an increase of $200 or $200,000 per year. Option two, 3.3 million with 250,000, and option three raised up to 300,000 increase on top of that $3.3 million operating referendum that would allow the district to make investments in a few of the four areas that were identified. The next slide identified the net tax impact over the current level. And you could see again for each of the three options. We then go to slide 17, which is colorful and the most important question on the survey, which is which option would you most likely support? Here you can see we took only the residents, so only the 92% that live in the district. We then broke it into three mutually exclusive subgroups, the first being staff. The staff is red, and staff are very, very important because they talk to their friends, their neighbors, and most importantly, the parents. And you can see 83% of the staff would support option three, but staff represent less than 1% of your community, so they literally don't get that many votes. So then we go to the green bar, which are the parents. And by definition, the parents have a vested interest in the district because their kids are going there. And you can see 60% of our parents that represent probably about 25% of our community, or 1 out of 4 folks in the Oconto Falls district have a child attending the district. So they're very important because they represent about a quarter. But the most important group in terms of votes are what I would call the purple people. Those are people that neither work in the district nor have children attending the district. And there you can see they're supporting option three, but at a level of 42%. So that's not a majority. It's not bad, but it's 42%. So the good news is clearly everyone would support one of the three options, and I guess the word would be the plurality of the folks would support option three. So then if you just go down a little bit further on this chart, you can see that 27% of our non-parent, non-staff wouldn't support any referendum. That's pretty typical in most communities. And we've got another 14% of our non-parent, non-staff that would like a little more information. So I'll put together a little summary at the end, but let's move on to the other part of the survey. And what we wanted to do was we didn't want to just talk about the operational referendum. We wanted to foreshadow the fact that that there will be or could potentially be an investment needed in the near future, and specifically, that would be called a capital referendum, where they would allow the district to issue a bond. So we wanted to be sure to get that information out for folks to see. And then we asked the question, slide 20, would you support the district exploring a capital referendum during the next year to update the school buildings with a focus on the middle school? Again, we broke it into the same three groups. The staff were at 82%, the parents were at 68%, and 49% of our non-parents, non-staff said, go ahead and explore. I'm not necessarily saying, yes, I'm going to support it, but I think there probably is a need there, and you should probably put together a plan. So then slide 21 is really, I guess, based on the data, what did we learn? What are our recommendations? And I would say the district or the board should consider pursuing a $3.3 million referendum next April. but consider potentially a slightly smaller increase. So again, we tested 3 different increase levels. And I would say potentially just under $300,000 a year. I think people are concerned about taxes. And I believe that if you were to go just under 300,000, you could demonstrate to folks that we would actually see a decrease for each of the next 4 years if you were to put together a plan. And I think you could probably still come up with a plan that would allow you to address your building maintenance, staff compensation, course offerings, and the security issues. Now, you might have to sharpen your pencils to do that a bit, but it strikes me that that's what we learned from this survey, that that's what folks would like you to do. And then secondly, go ahead and explore a capital referendum during the next year to update the school buildings, and specifically that middle school. And if it's a new construction or major renovation or whatever you're considering, that's probably next in the docket, but I think people do believe there's a need there as well. So let me pause and answer questions for the board.
Any questions from anyone at this point? I'm not hearing any questions at this point.
Okay.
If we were to act on the second recommendation regarding the capital referendum, would we go through this whole process again, another survey to check to check the kind of the pulse of the taxpayers?
Yeah, typically you would, and that's it's obviously a completely different scope and project, but it really is. And I guess in that particular instance, you'd be explaining the needs, the age of the school, maybe what the options are, and then if you're, and I'm not that familiar with the project, but yet those are typically things you would put into the survey, and then you'd ask folks, what should we do? In our world, at the end of the day, the survey really accomplishes 2 things. One is to explain to people and educate to people what you're doing, why you're doing it. And then ultimately it's incumbent on the board to put together a referendum that reflects not necessarily your own opinion, but what the majority of your voters want you to do. And if that's not to do anything, well, okay. Or if that's to do, build a new middle school, then that's what you should do. So that would typically be the next step for that project. And I think you have gone through, I think the Nexus group did a pretty thorough needs analysis. So you've got some of that work under your belt.
Okay, thank you.
This is Sharon. I just want to say thank you for a good presentation. And also I'm really impressed with our school district people and all the people that return the surveys. That's very, very impressive. Thank you.
It is, yeah.
All right, Dean, back to you.
So at this point, Bill, again, appreciate you and your team working with us to gather this information for the board and all those folks tuned in tonight. We took the feedback in the summary that Bill just provided, and part of that was to look at potentially decreasing that 300,000. We did run numbers. Want to thank Kim for her work in that, to identify if we implemented a $275,000 increase, which was between that 250 and 300. So essentially it's in the middle between option 2 and 3. We would be able then to, during that 4 years, the tax impact or the mill rate would actually, as it's in red, normally red is bad, but in this case red means it's actually a reduction. And so that's what we put together for a draft resolution, which is in your board packet. And just to remind you, the intent was to bring this to you in December so you could have a look at it, have a chance to read through it, ask questions. And the intent is actually not to take action tonight. Now you could. I don't recommend that. And the reasoning is that I'd like to give you a chance to think about this, let it percolate a little bit, and bring it back to you for the January board meeting. And in that time, it provides us as a district a chance to just go back and do that double, triple check on all the numbers, work with the legal counsel to ensure that all the language is absolutely correct, and then bring it back to you in January for potential action.
Does that sound all right to everyone? Okay.
Any
All right.
questions or concerns for me at this time regarding that? Okay, if you have any between now and the next board meeting, by all means, contact me, and then I can be working on it to bring it back to the full board for January. And just a heads up, so we provided you both with the resolution, and then we gave you an example of what the question would actually look like on the ballot. And that's that third page. It's very similar to the resolution language, just a few modifications. And all of this comes from the work that we do with legal counsel to essentially take our plan and put it into the legal language.
So those documents will come back also in January, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, everybody understand that? Okay. Then I believe we're at the point where we'd like a review of the January 4th, 2021 return to school plan.
Yep. If you look in your board packet, you can see November 3rd, 2020, we put out a communication to our families to give them an update on what we were experiencing and to provide them with information from Oconto County Health Department. And then in a nutshell, we gave them a plan for the time from November 3rd through January 4th. And as you know, we tried to put together a proactive plan that would enable us to be as much face-to-face time as we thought we could do while still maintaining operational staff. And one of the things that we ended that letter with was, barring any change, we would plan to do come back January 4th in the 4+1, 4 days face-to-face, 1 day virtual model. As I shared with you earlier in this meeting, there's information that you could take a look at. It's not a surprise to me. Ultimately, if you don't have the students and the staff, 1,650, together in our buildings, you can understand that when you have a positive case, you're going to have a lot less people identified as close contacts, which is identified in the data. Now, whether or not it's directly related to that or not, who knows? But that's something that you could surmise from that. The question then becomes, do we implement a virtual buffer from January 4th to January 8th? So a few different things that I'll throw out there for you to the board and everybody that's listening. There's not too many people, I don't think, in education that wouldn't agree that people would like to be face-to-face with students. Staff members miss their students. They miss being able to have a greater impact on them, a greater ability to ensure that they're engaged, all those positive things that end up resulting in a higher level of student learning. With that in mind, they also recognize the fact that we're dealing with things outside of our control right now, and so we're trying to be thoughtful to that. We're all sitting here this evening and we're masked and we're sitting in separation as a way to mitigate. There is reason to believe that people struggle with implementing all of these mitigation strategies at certain times of the year. And we just went through one of them, and depending on who you talk to, some people said they did deer camp just like they always did deer camp. And some people said, we didn't do deer camp this year. And it was very depressing, and we didn't do Thanksgiving with 30 or 40 of our extended family. And so everybody was a little bit different. One of the things, though, that you do hear from people is, well, we were willing to implement some of that mitigation for Thanksgiving, but Christmas is different. My family always celebrates Christmas, and so we're going to do that. Or whatever holidays that they're celebrating, there's reason to believe that there could be a higher level of involvement, which could lead to a higher level of spread. So I'm bringing this to you, the board, for consideration. You could continue to just move forward as we have currently planned, which is to bring all the students back on January 4th and do a 4+1 and see how it goes. You could take action this evening to say, I think we should implement a virtual buffer and have the students be virtual January 4th through January 8th, and then start the 4+1 on January 11th. And the reasoning behind that would be, if you have kids or staff or families who do go out, integrate, have fun, and unfortunately contract COVID and spread it, they're not bringing it back into your school district in those times right after that. I can make arguments either way. I mean, some folks will say, well, if they're going to do that, they're going to do it on Christmas. And then they've got 7 to 9 days where they're going to potentially see those things before January 4th, so that'll be taken care of. Then there's some people who say, well, they're going to go hoop it up on January 1st or December 31st. I don't know if I can say that in an open board meeting, hoop it up. They're going to go enjoy themselves and maybe not adhere to all the mitigation strategies. And then it's only a couple days afterwards. So I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer. I will tell you there's another side to it, which is not as mathematically calculated, which is simply emotion and anxiety. You have a large organization, and it's people-oriented. And I will tell you that we had some young people I thought did a great job tonight of sharing with you, the board, some of the things that they appreciate about what's been going on, and then quite honestly, the many challenges that they're dealing with related to trying to gain an education in a virtual environment. And I thought they did a super job of giving both sides of that. It's similar for our adults, and I will tell you that there's a lot of folks that are doing everything in their power to try to reach out to families and students, not just from an academic standpoint, but thinking about the social and emotional needs of the young people that they're working with. And a significant some of them, I will tell you, have concerns about January 4th. Now, that doesn't mean that you automatically make a decision based on that, but I would be remiss if I didn't share that. There was a lot of folks who really appreciated your decision to implement that virtual buffer after Thanksgiving. And again, if you look at your numbers, there would definitely have been kids that you had to quarantine had you been in position. On the flip side, we're going to have kids that we have to quarantine no matter when. So again, I can see both sides.
Thoughts? Questions?
I'm still in favor. I think I brought up the last time when we originally reviewed this, we were talking about going virtual coming out of the Christmas break, and kind of gave some of my feedback at that time, and I still support us coming back to school after. I realize that there are some families that maybe get together after Christmas. I'd say the predominant are probably on or before Christmas, or maybe shortly thereafter. We talked about implementing the new kind of 10-day sort of standard. If you look at where the days lie and when Christmas falls, day 10 would be the day that we would be back to school on the 4th. And I just haven't seen enough data to suggest that we're taking a large risk by coming back to school on the 4th. My support would be to come back. And I would further like to see us in the January meeting, and or if not then the February meeting, really starting the discussion of, do we need Wednesdays to be virtual, and when are we going to get to consider going back full 5 days? That's where I'm at on it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I would concur with what Clint has to say. I know obviously Dean and the faculty and the county have access to a lot more specific data, but I review data from, Wisconsin Department of Health and what I can review online, and just looking at, it seems for the most part, the state has been in a very heavy burden, and from the state overall, we're doing a lot better now. I mean, even you look, active cases in the state of Wisconsin as of November 24th, it was at about 76,000. We're now down to, as of today or yesterday, the stats from yesterday, down to 46,000 active cases. So overall in the state, doing a fair amount better. And even like today, I think when I looked an hour before the board meeting, it's one of the lowest numbers we've had in months for cases in the state. Obviously, we want to look at data closer to our district, but just overall, I think community members are starting to do a little bit better after we've had the peak several weeks ago. And I'd like to say I concur with what Clint would have to say, in that I don't feel the need to do that additional buffer. I'd like to see us go back on January 4th and also pursue at what point can we get back to 5 days, depending on how things go at the beginning of the year.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have a thought?
I
This is
was of the
Sharon.
Just a second, Sharon. Ken first,
Okay.
and then Sharon.
Okay.
I was of the impression, or thought I remembered that when we looked at this before, there was that, that buffer before we started up in January, so I was kind of surprised to see this, but I think that Clint makes a good argument that, and I agree with it, that that period between Christmas and New Year's, for all practical purposes, is a buffer, and so I think that there would be minimum risk in us starting up on the 4th of January.
All right, Sharon, please.
I'm in agreement with all three of the prior comments, and I would agree that as soon as we can get back to 5-day, I think that would be great. Thanks.
Anyone else?
The only thing I would say is, I know people want to get together at Christmas just like I do with my family, but if we can kind of make smaller gatherings over Christmas to get these kids back to school safely, I think everybody would appreciate that. But that's just an editorial comment.
To expand on that a little bit, I agree with the direction Pam is going. And I wonder if the student council people maybe could be asked to help in this next week until we get to the holiday break, to even encourage their fellow students to maybe do some communication about how important it is that everybody pays attention to the extent that they can with masking and social distancing over the holidays. The medical people continue to say that masking and social distancing are and stay out of big crowds. Those are the things that are going to help slow this thing down and to keep numbers in a proper trajectory towards the bottom. And if we can ask the community to partner with us to try to keep people in school, to not hit some metrics that are going to be problematic, I think that might be helpful if that can happen.
Dan, I think that's great. I think if we can empower the students, that'd be awesome. So Dan, I'm sure you're here listening to this, but I think that would be great.
I've said before, I think our administrators and our staff need to be commended for the job that they have done, the discipline that has really, the schools, and I think that's not just our district, and many districts around the state and maybe beyond. Schools are not the spreaders. It's out in the community, and hopefully with the political changes that are coming, the message will be stronger to the community to follow those recommendations. And so I don't know if I'm optimistic, but I'm hopeful that that will start to turn around the infection rate as more people will understand that.
I'm getting a sense from the comments I've heard that it seems like there's a good consensus that January 4th could be the return to school date, and it's also my understanding that we do not need to take action unless there was a change. So at this point, if anybody wished to make a change, it would be time now to speak. Otherwise, we're going to move on.
No change, but I would just like to add, I guess on behalf of myself, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of the other board members, just the appreciation to the staff. We realize, we're asking you to come in and not work in a virtual environment on those days. It's been a year of changes constantly, kind of back and forth, but it is absolutely sincerely appreciated. And I don't think there's many jobs in the community that are more essential than teaching our youth, and it is very much appreciated.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely.
Thanks. Very well said.
All right, moving on. Our last agenda item is the Oconto Falls Elementary Safety Plan revision. So Dean, are you taking that, or are we calling on?
So we have
Mr. Hall?
Oconto Falls Elementary Safety School Plan in your board docs, and this is something that you've actually approved last year about this time. They made a few, I'll call them minor changes. We have Mr. Neil Hall here this evening. If you have specific questions in regarding the plan, for the most part, up to this point, it's been some changes in some of the announcements that would be made during certain drills, whether it be the fire drill, making sure that there's attention to students and staff, that the building is all clear. I'll call them some minor changes. During an Alice alert, stating that this is not a drill in the situation where you're actually implementing Alice. And other than that, it's a similar plan to what they've had. We bring it to you, the board, because anytime we make changes, we are needing to ensure that you're aware of that. One of the other pieces that isn't on this document yet, but will be a future change, is Mr. Hall and their team, in conjunction with Detective Kuhn, have taken a look at the evacuation sites for Oconto Falls Elementary students, and they're looking at a modification to where they would evacuate to, because they've had a collaboration with the hospital. And the hospital has identified that that would be a potential site, and so that will go into the safety plan as well in the future, but right now that's still in the works. So barring any questions, we would just ask you to consider those minor changes to their safety plan.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
At this point, actually, we would ask that you
Would be-
potentially take action to approve it.
There were some slight revisions, right?
I will make a motion to accept the revised safety plan.
All right, motion by Pam. Is there a second?
I'll second it. This is Sharon.
Second by Sharon. Any question on the motion? So we're approving the revisions, some minor revisions.
For Oconto Falls Elementary, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. I believe we've reached the end of our agenda. You're all set?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I have a motion by Clint and a, let's get this, Clint, and a second by Ken. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.